It slid low across the plains, dragging dust and dead grass with it, whispering through fence wire like a warning nobody listened to anymore. The ranch sat alone against that wind. One house, one barn, one long dirt road that didn't bother pretending it led anywhere important. People passed it during the day and forgot it by night. That was the way he wanted it, before the story begins, before blood, before fear, before the mark on the door meant something to men who thought they were fearless. Take a moment. If stories that hit hard, stories that carry history, justice, and consequences matter to you, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends. These stories live only if you help them travel. The rancher didn't watch the road anymore. He used to. Years ago, when the world still felt unfinished and danger came loudly instead of quietly, now he listened instead. The difference mattered. His name was Elias Crowfeather, though nobody around there knew it. To the county records, he was just E. Crow, landowner, no family listed, no visitors logged. To the locals, he was that loner rancher, the man who bought land no one wanted, and spoke only when silence failed him. He woke before sunrise, every day without an alarm. The body remembers things the mind pretends it's forgotten. He brewed his coffee black and bitter, drank it standing, eyes on the window not because he feared something, but because he respected what might come. The mark on his door had been there for years, carved, not painted, clean lines cut deep into the old oak, never weathering, never fading. Most folks didn't notice it. Those who did felt uneasy without knowing why. It was a Cherokee war symbol, not decoration, not heritage art, a warning. By noon, the heat pressed down hard enough to make the air shimmer. Elias worked the fence line with slow precision, fingers calloused, movements economical. No wasted motion, no hurry. Men who hurry make mistakes. Men who survive learn patience the hard way. That was when the trucks appeared. 3 of them. Dust rose behind them like a deliberate announcement. Engines loud, laughter louder. They didn't slow when they reached the gate. They didn't need to. The chain was already broken, someone else's doing weeks ago, a test Elias had noticed and chosen not to fix. He watched them from a distance, leaning on the fence post, eyes unreadable. 5 men climbed out, young, confident, the kind of confidence borrowed from numbers and ignorance. Tattoos crept up their arms, crude symbols, gang colors stitched into vests they wore like armor. One carried a bat, another rolled a knife across his knuckles, smiling at the sound it made. They spread out like they owned the land. "Hey, old man," one of them shouted. "You Crow?" Elias didn't answer right away. Silence has weight. Used properly, it can bend weaker men. Eventually, he said, "You're trespassing." That made them laugh. The leader stepped forward. Big guy, thick neck, the kind who learned early that fear worked better than words. "This land sits on a pipeline route. You're in the way." Elias studied him carefully. Not the face, the stance, the breathing, the way his eyes flicked to the barn, then the house, measuring threats he didn't understand. "I'm not in the way," Elias said. "You are—" The bat came out of nowhere, slamming into his ribs. Pain exploded, sharp and immediate, the kind that steals air before it steals balance. Elias dropped to one knee, dust coating his palms. They circled him fast, boots kicking dirt into his face, laughter turning uglier. Another blow. Shoulder this time. Something cracked. "Thought you'd be tougher." Someone sneered. Elias tasted blood and smiled. That confused them. They dragged him toward the house, half carrying, half throwing him against the porch steps. The leader grabbed his hair, forced his head up. "Sign the land over," he said, pulling papers from his vest. "Or we keep going." Elias didn't look at the papers. He looked at the door. The leader followed his gaze. The laughter died instantly. The mark caught the light just right, deep, unmistakable, ancient. One of the men stepped back without realizing he'd done it. "Boss," another whispered. That's Cherokee." The leader swallowed. So that's not just heritage," the man said. "My uncle talked about those marks, said they mean the lands, protected, said men who ignore them don't walk away the same." Fear crept in slowly, like cold under skin. Elias spoke softly now. "You should leave." The leader hesitated. Then pride flared. "It's just a carving," he snapped, shoving Elias back. "You think some old symbol scares me?" He turned toward the door. That was his mistake. Elias moved, not fast, precise. His elbow caught the leader's throat with surgical force. The man dropped, choking, shock frozen on his face. Elias twisted, grabbed the bat mid-swing from another attacker, snapped it across his knee like dry wood. The others froze, not because of the violence, because of the calm. Elias stood straight despite the pain, blood streaking his mouth, eyes steady as stone. "You've already crossed the line," he said. "Now you're standing on it." One man bolted for the truck. Another fell to his knees. The leader tried to speak. "Couldn't." Elias leaned close and whispered, "Tell them why you ran." He stepped back. They ran. Engines screamed. Dust swallowed them whole. Elias sank onto the porch, breathing hard, staring at the mark on his door like it was an old friend who had finally been hurt again. He knew. This wasn't over. Men like that don't learn lessons. They bring reinforcements, and somewhere deep in his bones, something long asleep began to stir. The night didn't fall gently. It dropped like a verdict. Elias sat alone on the porch long after the trucks vanished, the dust settling back into the land as if it had never been disturbed. Pain pulsed through his ribs with each breath, deep and deliberate, a reminder that he was still flesh, no matter how much history ran in his blood. He didn't reach for the painkillers inside. He never did. Pain had a purpose. It kept memories sharp. The mark on the door watched the darkness with him. He remembered the first time he carved it. He had been younger then, angrier, still foolish enough to believe solitude could outrun consequence. His grandfather had warned him, hands shaking with age but eyes fierce as firelight. "Once you carve it," the old man had said, "you don't belong only to yourself anymore." Elias had carved it anyway. Now, hours later, headlights appeared again on the horizon. Not trucks, one car, slow, respectful. Elias stood, every muscle protesting, and stepped into the yard. The car stopped well short of the gate. A man stepped out alone, hands visible, posture cautious. He wore a sheriff's badge, but not like armor. More like a burden. "Elias Crow," the man called. "It's been a long time." Elias didn't answer immediately. "Then you shouldn't be here, Tom." Sheriff Tom Hale nodded. "I know, but when 5 known gang affiliates come screaming into town half-panicked, talking about Indian war signs and a rancher who didn't bleed right, people notice." He approached slowly, eyes flicking to the door, then away again. He knew the symbol. Everyone who mattered did. "They'll come back," Tom said quietly. "Not tonight, but soon, and not alone." Elias leaned against the fence. "Then they'll come back wrong. Tom Eksh." "Aled. That's what I was afraid you'd say." Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither man wanted to speak aloud. Finally, Tom said, "The council heard." Elias stiffened. "Which council?" "You know which. The Cherokee Nation didn't forget its own, especially not men who had once been asked to walk paths others couldn't." Elias had left before they could ask again. "They sent someone," Tom added. "She's already on her way." Elias closed his eyes. By dawn the land felt different, not threatened, alert. Birds kept their distance, the cattle clustered closer to the barn. Even the wind moved carefully, like it remembered something old and sharp beneath the soil. She arrived just after sunrise, no announcement, no convoy, just a single truck, dust-coated, stopping at the gate. Elias knew who it was before she stepped out. Maya Redwillow. She hadn't changed much. Hair braided tight, eyes steady, presence heavy with authority that didn't need volume. She wore plain clothes, but the mark on the silver pendant at her throat mirrored the one on Elias's door. "You look like hell," she said. "You always did know how to flatter," Elias replied. She walked past him without waiting for permission, her gaze fixing on the door. Her fingers brushed the carving with reverence. "You use the old pattern," she murmured. "That means you're claiming more than land." Elias shrugged. "They forced my hand." Maya turned to face him. "You carved that mark knowing what it would bring." "Yes," he said, "and hoping it wouldn't." She sighed. "The gangs moving through this county aren't just local muscle. They're backed by corporate interests, private security, off-the-books enforcement. They don't scare easy." Elias smiled thinly. "Neither do we. That night the attack came. No engines, no shouting, just shadows slipping through the fence line. boots wrapped in cloth, weapons drawn. Professional this time. Men trained to hurt quietly. They didn't see Maya. She moved like smoke, disabling the first intruder before he could raise his rifle. Elias took the second, wrenching the man's arm until bones snapped like dry twig. A third man lunged from the dark. Elias pivoted, knife flashing, stopping inches from the man's throat. "Go," Elias whispered, "and tell them." The man ran. They always ran. By morning, the message had spread. The ranch wasn't just protected, it was claimed. And somewhere far beyond the plains, men in clean suits began to realize they had made a mistake measured not in dollars, but in blood. The first thing Elias felt was memory. Not the soft kind that drifts in when you're tired, but the sharp, involuntary kind that arrives when something ancient recognizes a threat. He stood at the edge of his land as dawn stretched thin fingers of light across the plains. And he knew, without being told, that the line had been crossed, somewhere far beyond fences and deeds. Maya felt it too. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood beside him, eyes scanning the horizon, hand resting near the knife at her belt. The land was quiet again, but it wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. "They've called in favors," she said finally. "Not gangs, contractors, men who don't wear colors and don't talk afterward." Elias nodded. That was always how it ended. Maya turned to him. "You never told them everything. Not even the council." He didn't deny it. By noon, the road filled again, but this time there was no dust cloud, no roaring engines. 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop outside the gate, clean as lies. Men stepped out wearing neutral clothes, earpieces barely visible, rifles carried like tools instead of threats. One man walked forward alone. He was older, calm, the kind of calm that came from having ordered terrible things and slept anyway. "Mr. Crow, he is aide. I represent parties with significant interest in this land. We're prepared to be generous." Elias didn't move. "You assaulted our associates," the man continued. "You damaged property. You killed one of our contractors last night." "That man ran," Elias replied. "He chose his ending after that." The man's eyes flicked to the door, to the mark. His composure faltered, just slightly. "I was hoping that symbol was decorative," he said. Maya stepped forward now. "You know better." The man exhaled. "Then you know we can't walk away." Elias finally spoke the words he hadn't said in years. "Neither can I." The signal was almost invisible. A hand gesture. A breath. The attack came from every side. Shots cracked through the air. Wood splintered. The barn erupted in flame as something explosive hit its far wall. Elias moved without thought, body remembering what the mind had locked away. He dragged Maya behind cover, returned fire with brutal efficiency, each movement precise, final. Men fell, not chaotically, deliberately. The leader shouted orders, but fear had already infected his voice. These weren't opponents who panicked. They were opponents who adapted, and still lost. Elias closed the distance between himself and the leader in seconds. The man raised his weapon too late. Elias knocked it aside, drove him to the ground, boot on his chest. "Who sent you?" Elias demanded. The man coughed, blood on his lips. "You don't understand what you are standing in the way of." Elias leaned closer. "I understand exactly." He ended it quickly. When the smoke cleared, the land was scarred but standing. Sirens wailed in the distance. Tom Hale would arrive soon, with paperwork and questions and the lie of order. The council would hear, so would others. But the message had already been sent. This land was not for sale. That night, elders arrived quietly. No lights, no ceremony. They St. Ud at the door, touching the mark, murmuring words older than the ranch, older than the state that claimed it. Maya faced Elias. "You can't keep hiding out here alone." He looked at the land, at the scars, at the door. "I never was alone." She smiled sadly. "No, you were just waiting." By morning, the ranch no longer felt forgotten. It felt remembered. And far away, powerful men erased this place from their maps. Not because they were kind, but because they finally understood the cost of ignoring marks carved by hands that remembered war. The wind passed over the plains again. This time it sounded like approval.